Welcome to the Blending In podcast, where we chat with innovative educators who are integrating EdTech. I'm your host, Ashley Yazarlu, and I'm so glad you're listening in today. As teachers, we don't often get the chance to see into the classrooms of our colleagues, but by listening in today, you'll get an auditory peek into the classroom of a middle school science teacher, Mr. Bryce Bovee, who is currently teaching at Dartmouth Middle School in Hemet Unified School District. Bryce was nominated by a fellow teacher on special assignment here at the Professional Development Academy in my district, and I was told that I have to talk to him. So today, you're going to get to know him right alongside me. I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a really interesting episode for me because all of the people I've interviewed up until this point are teachers that I have known and I have seen teach in action. And your interview is a little different because I work with a team of teachers who are coaches to other teachers. And I reached out to them and I asked for recommendations of who they've seen in their different content areas across the district that is doing great things with educational technology. And your name came up. So I'm really excited to get to know you and hear about all the great things that you're doing.
Well, it's not always great things. I do try my best, but I'm really thankful that whoever that was mentioned. That makes me feel very happy. It's probably Mike, right?
Yeah, it was
I think
Mr. Mike.
it's because we've
Alpha.
had like pizza and food together that he was like mentioning that to you. I mean, there's nothing really special, but well, very cool.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the classroom and a little bit about just who you are.
All right. So originally I thought I was going to go into the medical field. Like my whole family was really into that. And so, I was like, I'm going to just volunteer. I was like already like way into it. I was about to start nursing school and stuff. I was literally weeks away from starting. And I started volunteering in the emergency room. And there was actually one day, it was like pretty late at night, and this guy came into the operating room and he fell off of a tree and put his arm backwards and dislocated his shoulder, and his shoulder's bulging out somewhere where it was not supposed to. And as they were like popping it back into place and just making all the wonderful sounds, I literally passed out, like just cold on the floor. And
it wasn't
yeah,
for you.
they realized, oh wow, okay, now we have two things to worry about here. And I was like, okay, maybe that was just a one-off thing. And I continued to try it out and continued to be a part of the medical field and realized, yeah, that the sights, the sounds, smells, all that stuff, it just was not my vibe. I was not feeling it. It was not okay. I did not see myself doing that for the rest of my career. And so I was kind of at odds here, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I was about to get married. I was engaged at that time to my wife now. And my father-in-law just started teaching. He made a career switch from management in the business world to teaching, and he really, really loved it. And he's like, you know what, you would make a really good teacher. You should try it. And so at that point, I made the little shift. I started teaching part-time and substituting, and I really did get hooked. And I realized, yeah, this is good. I like this. I can blend my passion for science and but also I can jump in and help other people. I don't have to deal with the blood and guts, and I can make a difference in the world. And it's just a lot better solution. And so yeah, that's kind of what started me into the wonderful field of teaching.
That's great. Like you had a career shift from a traumatic experience. I love it. It's kind of funny. So I got to ask you then, when you said you were subbing and you just kind of fell in love with it, like what was it that clicked for you? Was it just being up in front of kids and leading them? Was it, the relationships you were building with kids? Like, what was it about it that just was that drew you in?
Yeah. So I think deep in my mind, more than making money, obviously you don't go into teaching to get rich, was this passion for wanting to help people. And something about that really kind of drew me in. And when I was it was mainly a long-term position that I started at this school local to here. It was with a bunch of English language learners. I didn't speak a lick of Spanish at the time. And Yeah, there was just something like just building these relationship with these kids that were so much different than me. And some of them had some
Yeah.
really intensely difficult lives, but we were able to make these really strong connections in like the week or a month and a half that I was there. And after that, I was like, this is awesome. I could be in this field. I can make a difference on people's lives on a daily basis. And you really do build really positive relationships with kids. And you are often a role model that they don't have at home.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I think, that point. I just, even now, I'm thinking about certain kids from that long term position that
Mm.
really stuck in my mind that really kind of propelled me into it.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of the same for me. I had a stint where I worked in South Central Los Angeles, and that was when it really just clicked for me that the relationships with the kids are the most important thing. And without that relationship, like it doesn't matter what bells and whistles I have, pulling out of my bag of tricks to do in the classroom. If I don't have good relationships with them, it's all downhill from there. So what are you doing to blend in and cultivate opportunities to build positive relationships with your students?
I would say the first one is really what you just mentioned. It's if you don't, because I know other teachers that use the exact same tools as me, but really, really struggle with students. And it's just because if you don't have the foundation built of really positive relationships, they won't respect you. It doesn't matter if you have the best teaching practices, the best strategies. If you don't have that relationship established, they won't want to do anything for you.
Yeah.
And I've had multiple students say that, like, oh, Mr. Bovee, like, I really don't like science at all. Like, I just don't like the content. It's just not my thing. There's too much math in it, but I'm going to do it because I really like you. And
Yeah.
so, like, that really warms my heart. And there's a few kids, of course, that don't like me that much. But for the most part, if you really intensely focus on making your biggest priority to build healthy relationships, ones that are like a really loving but also consistent parent, um, that is going to produce, I would say, the biggest effect. And it was going to make all the tools that you choose to use a lot more effective.
So you were just mentioning the importance of building those positive relationships with your students. So, and you mentioned that you have people next to you, around you, close to you in the teacher, setting, in the school setting, that struggle with that. So what advice would you have for them about how to do that effectively with kids?
Okay, so to make it really tangible, this is how I generally will start. First of all, I really do think that it's important to build in just, they call them all these different things like SEL questions, I guess is a big buzzword right now. But what I'll do is, especially at the beginning of the year, I'll add a lot just throughout my content of just questions like, all right, for real though, guys, would you rather go to Starbucks, or would you rather go to like Del Taco if you had $5? Like, where would you spend that money? Or like, what's your favorite when it's we were learning about seasons? Okay, I
Mhm.
was like, all right, guys, what's your favorite season and why? And let's talk about it for a little bit. Also, another one is just kind of studying up, just listening to the interactions and knowing kind of like the culture of the middle
Mhm.
schoolers. Because if I say something, like if I tie my content into like certain memes that are popular or just what they're talking about nowadays, stuff that's really popular on TikTok, it instantly sparks a bunch of engagement and establishes relationships too. So if I can even ask students like, hey, what do you guys mean when like you're talking about this? And I'm able to tie that into my content whenever I can. And as silly as it sounds, bringing in that type of stuff really does build relationships pretty quickly.
Yeah. I was just talking about this in a training I'm doing with some teachers on student motivation, about how it's so important to kind of like be curious and ask questions. So it can be connected to the content, but sometimes it's a would you rather, and just like you're genuinely curious because you want to know them as a human being. And when they realize, oh, this person actually cares about me, then they're more likely to do the hard work of learning that you're asking them to do.
Oh yeah.
So I love that you're doing that. And you mentioned a buzzword, SEL. There's another buzzword that's like circulating around ed tech, or just not ed tech, but the world of education right now. And that's the word equity. And you had mentioned in your bio that you wrote for this episode that you said you're passionate about blending technology into every aspect of the classroom, and you believe that strong use of it can create more effective and equitable learning environment. So my next question kind of has to do with that. Like, how are you using blended learning to make your classroom more equitable for your students?
That's a really good question. And I would say that the technology has opened the door to allow us to see all of our students in a different light really quickly. For example, one tool that I like to use consistently is Pear Deck. And with Pear Deck, I can like display a prompt, either if we're doing a lab or I'm asking a question about something we're learning. And I can instantly see my entire class's responses on my second monitor live. And so I can instantly see, okay, this certain student is really struggling. This certain student is really having a hard time articulating his writing, but he can explain it to me so perfectly. So there must be a little barrier there with his writing. And just with live feedback from tools like Pear Deck and stuff, I can meet students where they're at and enable them to express their knowledge of the content in the way that best works for them. And I can just see exactly how I can meet their needs a lot quicker than I would have if it was just like on pen and paper.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure like every teacher I've interviewed on this podcast so far has mentioned Pear Deck. So I cannot reiterate enough how powerful that tool is. I think there was a lot of use of it during the pandemic and online learning. But now that we've transitioned back into the classroom, it's almost like it's sort of been forgotten about, but it's still there and you can still use it with students that are with you in person. And you're right, you get that instantaneous live feedback and you can respond to their needs right then. You don't have to wait to take a stack of papers home to read what they've written and then get back to them a day or two later. Like, it's instantaneous. And I just love that you're using it in that way.
And I guess another thing too would be just in science, all of the different simulations and opportunities that you can just basically find anything on Google. And I found some really, really cool things that make learning about like the sun, earth, and moon system. We're talking about that right now. Like, how would we ever like know all that stuff unless we had a simulation that we can manipulate and drag, and students are able to just like right there hands-on see how the rotation of the earth and the place where it's at and the universe causes like seasons and temperature and all that stuff. You would have to go to NASA and have like or study a telescope or reading about it in a book, but it's just not the same as having some of the simulations that these people have put together. And tools like this make teaching a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Is it difficult to find high quality simulations out there, or are you pulling from a specific resource for your simulations? Like, where are you getting those from?
So that's kind of two-tiered right here. I would say there's this one specific for science called PhET, PhET, and they have like many simulations that are very high quality, and they are open source. Anybody can use them. They're not charging you. They're not going to ask you to pay for a subscription or anything if you use them all the time.
It's great.
I used those a lot. Number two, I would say I do pull from our district adopted curriculum. They do have a few really good simulations, but to be entirely honest, I probably have found more use off of some of the free stuff than even the stuff that we have in our district. There's a lot out there that you can pay little to nothing for and have really high quality stuff.
That's awesome. So you mentioned Pear Deck and simulations. Are those your two favorite things, or do you have other tools or platforms that are also valuable as well?
Yeah, I would definitely say that if I had to pick just two, it would be Pear Deck and simulations. I kind of see my lessons as like a recipe, and I'll use Google Slides with Pear Deck to create like a recipe from start to finish. Like, kids know exactly what to expect, and if they put all these pieces together and we do it consistently every time, they're going to learn what the objective is. And I'll structure out my Google Slides with kind of like a quick starter or bell work that either engages them and gets them ready for the lesson, I'll then immediately after that throw in what's called the whom question. It's an SEL question that has nothing to do with what we're talking about generally, but just gets everybody into a tight debate or just having fun. Sometimes I'll get them moving and say, go to this corner if you have that opinion, or go to that corner if that. Usually that will only last 2 minutes. Oh, big part of it for number 3, I guess I would say, is timers. Timers are huge.
Yes.
It's crazy how if you say you have 3 minutes to do this project or 3 hours to do this project, they'll still produce the same work. And timers are magic. You can get
Yes.
so much done if you have timers. So yeah, in those Google Slides, like that home question, that quick starter, and then the lesson itself, every single slide has a timer.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, if you underestimated or overestimated how long it would take, you can always just edit the timer, but there is a timer there, and kids know, like, okay, I got to speed up.
I love that. I think a lot of times we underestimate the importance of communicating urgency in our management of the time in our classroom. It's like we have this 50-minute window of information that we have to get across to kids. And sometimes it's a little bit, well, they didn't finish, so they can just finish for homework. It's like, put a timer on it. Like the timer will definitely help create that sense of urgency, like it has to be done now. And they're more likely to get it done when they kind of feel that little bit of pressure. It's not bad pressure. It's a good kind of pressure to put on them with the use of timers. And I love how you just use the metaphor of a recipe for your lesson design. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That's very cool.
Yeah, actually, it was one of the principals when they were first observing me. They're like, "Oh, it kind of looks, your lessons are like a recipe." Oh, that's a cool way to put it. I'm going to use that.
That's very cool. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, then after like the lesson, we would just usually close it out with like a closer, exit ticket, whatever you call it, and with Pear Deck, the beautiful thing, like we were just talking about, is I can instantly see, like, I ask a very specific question that will instantly gauge like how much they understood from what we talked about, and I can immediately, instead of having to go over the weekend and grade papers, I can see, okay, Joe and John over here, they have no idea what they're talking about, so I'm gonna like make sure I follow up with them tomorrow, and we're gonna review this. And Pear Deck is awesome because literally so many times I will completely change course of where I thought I was going to go because I'm like, nope, we're not ready to move on yet. Or wow, these kids actually got this a lot quicker than I thought we did. We can move on.
Yeah.
And you do that immediate feedback, and being able to see everybody all at once enables me to make real-time decisions on their learning instead of having to like plan out my entire month.
Yeah, I mean, you're using Pear Deck to blend in formative assessment to guide your instruction on the spot, which is so awesome. I wish everybody would do things like this for our kids. Oh man, you're just giving me all kinds of good stuff here today, Bryce. Okay, so you have your recipes, you're using Pear Deck, you're throwing in the simulations, but I'm sure that every day is not perfect, right? So what challenges have you experienced when you're implementing blended learning in your classroom?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll give you one that happened exactly 2 days ago. All right.
Okay, give it to me.
I put together this really nice Pear Deck. I was so proud of it. I usually try to do this the day before, so I'm not like stressing the morning of or anything. And this Pear Deck was beautiful. Amazing simulations linked, great questions, objective right there. And I come in the morning, and I got there even 40 minutes early. So I'm all prepped and ready. And my computer doesn't want to turn on. I'm like, what? It's not working. My computer's not turning on. And eventually, right before they came in, the computer had to restart, reboot, update. It would not want to connect to the projector. So I could not project anything I wanted to show the students. And so right there, like there's something like that, that despite all of your prep, sometimes technology has its shortcomings.
Yeah.
And so I've resorted to having to learn a lot of just like basic tech stuff and watch YouTube videos on like, oh, how do I connect my computer to the projector when it does this? Oh, I need to make sure the Bluetooth is on. Sometimes it turns off randomly. And that's the type of stuff that really kind of gets annoying, is the technical difficulties or shortcomings, and you always have to be prepared. And so what I ended up doing that specific day is I printed my slides out and quickly just like made fill in the blanks for different things, and turned it into a paper version and on the spot. And so you kind of have to be ready. Just kind of have like at least, even if you don't have it totally prepped, have kind of like a backup plan. Like if everything fails here with my technology, what would I do? If you have something, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, I love that. Like have a plan B Like, even if it's not a plan B of that particular day's lesson, but like an emergency plan B that you can pull out, whenever you need to when the tech fails. It's always good to have something on deck, because the last thing you want is to be sitting there with nothing to do with these kids, because they will definitely find ways to get themselves in all kinds of trouble when they're bored. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So in thinking back, how long have you been teaching now, Bryce?
My 4th year in the district.
Okay.
I taught for either substitute or at like a little private Christian charter for 2 years before that. So 6 total years, 4 years within it.
Okay. So 6 total years. So I want you to think back to that like first time in the classroom. And what's something that you wish you would have known as a first year teacher that you know now?
Being consistent is absolutely critical.
Okay.
Because like you said, if you give kids too much time and you don't have structure and consistency, they'll tear you apart. And that's 100% my biggest issue. Like, I would say my first 2 years of teaching was I would come in every day and be like, all right, I have no idea what I'm doing today, but I'll figure something out. And or my lessons will be different, and I would prep, but it would be completely different. Kids would not know exactly what's happening. My procedures, my routines, they weren't there. Class wasn't flowing like a recipe. It was kind of just like flowing in whatever directions the kids wanted it to. And
we'll call that organic.
Yes, I guess so. It works maybe if you have a class of like 3 people or something, but not when you have 40 middle schoolers.
No, that's not going to work.
So I would say that the biggest thing I would recommend to anybody that's starting out with teaching is really just pick a couple tools that you feel really comfortable with, that you know are good, and build consistent procedures and routines around those. Because if you're doing that, then you know what to expect. Planning's a lot easier for you, because you can just pull things into your recipe. You can fix that. And then kids also, they like consistency and routine. A lot of them don't have that at home at all. Their home lives are chaotic and crazy. And a lot of them really do appreciate a consistent, structured environment.
Yeah.
And so kids need to know like what they're doing, what they're expected, what's expected of them, the rigor that you want from them. They need to know like from start to finish kind of how your class is gonna like structure. If they deviate from that structure, what's the consequence? It needs to be consistent, needs to be fair. You can't be punishing them one way and then completely punishing them different the next day. Just consistency is so crucial. And if kids feel that consistency, you're going to feel it as well. And life as a teacher is just so much easier when you're not just like going in chaos mode.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I found that to be true in my teaching experience as well. Well, thank you so much for coming on with me today, Bryce. It's been a really enlightening conversation, and it's been great getting to know you.
Thank you. It's been a really big pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Blending In podcast. I hope you gleaned some inspiration to blend in EdTech and some top-notch transformational techniques into your instruction. You can find show notes and resources from today's episode on our website, blendinginpodcast.com. If you loved what you heard today, leave a review and hit the subscribe button to get notified when new episodes are dropped. Also, follow us on social media and use hashtag blendinginpodcast to add to the conversation. Until next time, don't hesitate to innovate and integrate.